Okay, hello. My name is Premila Foster. I'm an anthropologist based in Mbantwe or Alice Springs. And joining us today for session 2 is Damien Hastings James and Peter Murray from Fitzroy Crossing in WA. So Damien is currently working as an anthropologist for the Kimberley Land Council. Concurrent to this position, he has been undertaking research with the Ngurara people, you can correct my pronunciation later, for his PhD in anthropology through the University of Western Australia. Since 2018, he has been primarily based in the Kimberley town of Fitzroy Crossing, working with the Yananijara Aboriginal Corporation and the Ngurara Rangers as part of his research and fieldwork with the Ngurara people. Working with the Ngurara Rangers has been a central component of his research, which is focused on looking at how Ngurara people, and particularly the younger generation, are engaging with country in a contemporary context. So in 2019, he was involved in the process that took place with the return of some native title materials to Yananijara PBC from Kimberley Land Council. So Peter Murray is the CEO of Yananijara Aboriginal Corporation, and I think Peter's been roped in a little bit at the last minute, so I'm going to get him to introduce himself, if you're happy to take it away, Peter.
Yep. Apologies to Frankie, couldn't make it this morning, who was supposed to be in the room today or in the meeting with Damien, but I had spare free morning, so yeah, for everyone, my name is Peter Murray. I'm a traditional owner of Ngurara, or Walmatjari people. I've started off as a ranger, then worked my way up into the CEO's position, but it was a hard road for us. Getting native title and then moving into mainstream land management and then so on. So, so yeah, like I say, our PBC is about 7-8 years old. It's a virgin organization who's really moving forward and paving the way forward in self-determination to manage Ngurara native title, which is Yananijara Aboriginal Corporation. And so in time, looking at all the native title material, we want to make sure we capture and collect all data in moving forward. We've created a database that store all that data that's been used for native title purposes, and really move into that self-determination space to manage all our data and manage country through ranger programs and so on. So yeah, on the way, it's just there are a lot of gaps, but we are building our capacity into manage genealogy, data, land management, and so on. So yeah, that's a short little introduction. But if people got questions as we go, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, and that'd be great. Would be welcome questions as we're sort of talking together. I really thank Peter for joining us today. He's had like a pretty busy week. He's been in PBC meetings all week, so it's a privilege and an honour for him to jump in on this conference and speak to us. And he's got such a wealth of experience and knowledge in this area. And as he said, he knows it from the ground up. He was a ranger himself in his younger years, and he's still young. And now he's he was a coordinator and he's been part of the Indigenous Ranger program in the Kimberley. And now he's really he's the CEO of Yananijara, as he said. He's fantastic at guiding that corporation, and they're doing some really interesting things. I thought it would be a lot more interesting to do this presentation here in Fitzroy Crossing, this talk, and in the Yanananjara office. We're not quite in the Yanananjara office, where we're sort of about 20 meters away. We had to move out of the office because the ranger coordinators are doing their own Zoom presentation. But I really think that sort of speaks to, you know, being here in Fitzroy and in the YAC office, we're kind of at the coalface of what this conference has been sort of the lines the conference has been following, which is on the protection and management of the Indigenous estate. And I think here, sitting with Peter in the YAC office and Woodora Ranger office, you know, that's what's happening in practice. These guys are, you know, working on country and within their operations, they're trying to protect and manage their own country in Woodora. So we don't have a lot of time, but I thought we'd just give a brief snapshot today of a PBC's views on usefulness of native title materials in managing their country. So how native title materials are useful for Yanananjara and Woodora Rangers in their operations of protecting and managing their country. Peter would probably be better explaining to you a little bit of the background in Woodora, and we could maybe just talk about how that native title materials came about, beginning in the 90s. And then beyond that, we'll briefly talk about the transfer process that took place in 2019 between the KLC and Yanananjara in regard to a specific set of native title materials, some site data that is now being implemented by the Rangers and Yanananjara for their operations. But with Woodora, we're really talking about a large area, around with 100,000 square kilometres of country, incorporating now both Woodora and Yimarua and Woodora.
Yeah, so we're one of the largest native title claim in the country, and we've got about 4 different language groups within our native title boundary, and there's a lot of data and a lot of members. So 400 plus members. It's really hard to satisfy or work with one language group to get out on country, and it's been a long road for us to really have access to country, take traditional owners and youth out on country through the Ranger program, which really driven Woodora, Yanananjara from day one. But we've used the Ranger program to be the eyes and ears of the boundary to capture and record and take traditional owners and youth out on country to capture the knowledge transfers. On the other note, the native title process was happening, and we've, like I said, it's been a long road, and now the PBC have been set up. So we're just looking at what organization has data sitting in their database that belongs to Woodora native title landholders, and is trying to capture those data and transferring it to Yanananjara. So we're mainly forecasting for the future. We are losing a lot of our elderly traditional owners, and we've got a lot of young youth and young senior elders that are coming through, and yet they still yet to be aware of data that is sitting in rep bodies like KLC. But then the process for them to capture or get a hold of those data, there's always a process, and for Yanananjara, it's not like when we get those data, then it's not just handing it out to traditional owners. There will be a process of for members and common law holders to obtain those data. But there is a tick list that we are working with to make sure that the data or genealogy gets in the right hand for the right purpose. And Kimberley is a large area, and last thing you need is, handing the data to a traditional owner or common law holder that's going to use the data for power and to conquer other groups, or conquer the native title group to, it just means, dysfunction and breakdown of governance and things like that. So for us in going forward, we were just laying the foundation to make sure that our governance was at a high level to manage Mudra and manage data that's that's going to be used for the right purpose.
And when we're talking about these native title materials, we're talking like quite a wealth of materials as well. I mean, this dates back to the 90s, the early 90s, when the anthropologists who did the Ngurra claims, Ngurra and Yimarawara Ngurra, Daniel Bashon, started working with you guys and your old people from about 93, maybe before. So we're talking about materials that have been collated over quite a vast period of time now, through the 90s, when you did all those trips out into the Great Sand, particularly, even right up until sort of 2015, 2016, when you were going through the Marawara stuff, which was in the sort of the more northern pastoral areas, the southern Kimberley pastoral areas that are now part of the Ngurra lands as well. There's a lot of material there, isn't there, from the work you guys did with Daniel and others?
Yeah, so same thing, as any organization, we're moving into the self-determination space, and there will be a time where rep bodies, PBC moving away from rep bodies to be able to manage their own area, and a lot of it falls down to funding and for PBCs in moving forward. So we've been great. Like, we've been making small steps in moving forward into that, into the future, with fine planning and putting in structures that are gonna benefit us in the long term. And as everyone knows, the mining boom is booming, and there are a lot of activities happening out on different areas, and the data that we're trying to capture is that it's all traditional knowledge and all that, but going through the courts with mining company to secure a HPA, it's getting more harder and harder for PBCs to be able to stand strong and have a heritage protection agreement against mining companies to be able to protect their land and sites.
So that might bring us to the transfer return of data that happened between the KLC and Yanananjara in 2019, where you were able to negotiate with the KLC to have returned a specific set of native title materials, which was the site data, of locations of places and things. And what were your feelings with that process, and how is that data now being useful and implemented into Yanananjara's operations?
Well, firstly, with the discussion with Kimberley Land Council was to scope out a process, and one of the process was looking at light sensitive data, or if you want to call it just light data, which is looking at GPS location of Gila sites and stuff like that. And it was light for reaching the confidentially agreements between traditional owners and Yarnga. So we have to remain at that high level with keeping all data secured, and the process is we have to remain in that high level strictness of holding the data. Like I said, it's really hard when traditional owners just calls in and say they want their genealogy. But one of the steps is with Yarnga is to make sure that we do a due diligence process checklist to make sure that we're ticking the boxes on how and why traditional owners can obtain their genealogy for
Yeah.
the right reason.
And so now that the site data has been returned to Yananjara and Mudura, there have been some ways that you've used that, but you're also talking about being able to have the full extent of the native title materials returned, like genealogies and what have you.
Yeah, well, like any rep body, there is a process and they have to hand back those data, but then we have to scope out in time on what the most important data that we needed, and the site data was needed because of the rangers needed site location of areas that traditional owners have requested the rangers to visit certain areas and certain sites that were not familiar with some of the traditional owners. And like I said, we were forecasting process for the future. So everyone can have that opportunity to look at site data that's been stored within the organization, so they can have the opportunity to go out of the country.
Hey, just to jump in there, Damien and Peter, could you maybe just wrap it up so we can get some questions in if Catherine wants to go?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, we could probably just keep on chatting about this forever. I guess we've covered a few things. In terms of, in terms of the ranger work with this this site data that's been transferred, they've been able to use it in specific ways for things like fire management, going out on country, looking at certain areas and managing country in certain ways. And then maybe the PBC itself, the Yananjara, has been able to, and in the future is going to be able to use that data in specific ways when it comes to sort of negotiating different things, but also further a lot of native title materials. One would be great for the PBC, for the members to get back, but also for the PBC in future operations.
Yeah, so the data is really handy to have on site to plan out range of programs like projects like fire management, heritage surveys through the PBCs, and also getting the Section 29 from the
Exploration tenements.
Yeah, the exploration tenement. So it's giving us more insights for us to respond quickly and more appropriately to securing those HPAs with mining companies.